You ever have a stranger look you dead in the eye and tell you your life has an expiration date? Because that's exactly what happened on a quiet Texas morning when a woman I'd never seen before stood on my grandfather's porch and said, real calm, real confident, "You've got 30 days to remove your livestock, or we'll take legal action to have you removed." I was barefoot, coffee still hot in my hand, staring past her at the pasture where my cattle moved slow in the early light, same way they always had. And she said it like she was reading me the weather, not threatening to erase 70 years of my family's life. Her name was Melissa Hart, and she held a clipboard like it was scripture. Vanilla perfume so strong it felt like chemical warfare drifting across honest ranch air, and that HOA smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Your property is in violation of community standards," she said, tapping the paper like it was a verdict. "Livestock odors, health concerns, environmental impact." I blinked, genuinely confused, because my family had been running cattle on that land since 1954, long before her subdivision even existed on a survey map. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice even, "you do realize this is private land, right? My land." She let out this little laugh sharp enough to sting. Not for much longer. And right there on my own porch I realized this wasn't about cows. It was about control. My name is Ethan Cole, and 6 months before that morning, my life looked nothing like it did, standing there with a mug in my hand and a woman trying to evict me from a ranch she'd moved next to last week. I'd been living in Northern Virginia working as a senior policy consultant, the kind of job where you press shirts, drink burnt office coffee, and write regulations most people never read, but still somehow end up ruled by. For nearly 15 years, I lived inside housing compliance and federal oversight, HOA governance frameworks, enforcement boundaries, all the unsexy stuff that keeps bad actors from quietly wrecking people's lives. Then my grandfather passed, and he left me 40 acres outside a small town called Red Willow, Texas, population barely 10,000 on a good day. It wasn't flashy. It was fences my grandfather built by hand, a barn that leaned a little, and a piece of land that had survived droughts, recessions, and more than a few oil companies sniffing around for mineral rights. I moved down thinking I'd finally found peace, and for a little while, I did. Morning fence checks, quiet evenings, cicadas winding up as the sun dropped low. Then, Whispering Ridge Estates showed up overnight like a movie set getting built around me. Bulldozers, billboards, rustic charm with modern luxury, which is developer language for pretending you love rural life while trying to sanitize it out of existence. Melissa moved in 2 houses down from the edge of my property. Former real estate agent from Dallas, big house, perfect lawn, not a speck of dust anywhere. And within weeks, she was on the HOA board. Within a month, she was president. And suddenly my mailbox started filling up. First polite notices, then warnings, then violations printed on thick paper like they wanted the threat to feel heavier. According to Melissa, my cattle were a nuisance. My barn was an eyesore. My operation was a potential health risk. At first I laughed it off. I thought city nerves adjusting to country reality. I even tried to be nice. I invited her over, offered iced tea, told her straight up, cows smell like cows because they're cows. She showed up with a camera instead. And her cousin, who just happened to work county code enforcement, walking behind her like backup. They took pictures of everything. The manure pile, the old tractor my grandfather rebuilt by hand, my chicken coop. Melissa didn't ask questions like a neighbor. She collected angles like a prosecutor. Then came the HOA notice for a mandatory compliance hearing. It was scheduled at their clubhouse, this glossy little building with stone veneer and a fake fireplace like they were cosplaying Community. I went because I'm not scared of paper. The room was arranged like a bad courtroom drama, long table board members lined up behind it, and one lonely folding chair facing them. Guess who that chair was for? Melissa sat dead center, blazer, crisp hair, perfect smile locked in place. Behind her, a projector screen lit up with photos of my ranch labeled like crime scene evidence. "Mr. Cole," she said, voice echoing slightly, "you're here to address serious violations of our community covenants." "Okay," I said, looking around at the other board members. Most of them didn't look evil, just nervous. "Show me the recorded covenants, the documents that actually give you authority over my land." Melissa's smile twitched. She shuffled papers, did that little performance where someone pretends they're flipping to the right page, when the right page doesn't exist. Then she hit me with it. "We don't need to provide internal documentation to a non-member," she said like she'd practiced it in the mirror. I leaned forward. "You're telling me you can fine me, sue me, remove my livestock, and you can't show the legal basis?" She lifted her chin. "This property is subject to community standards." I reached into my jacket and slid my business card across that table. "Before we go any further," I said, "you should know I spent most of my career helping write the rules that govern HOA authority." You could feel the air shift like someone unplugged the room. Melissa laughed it off too loud, too quick. But one woman on the board, a quiet elementary school teacher named Lena Park, stared at Melissa like something didn't add up. That meeting ended fast, too fast. And as people filed out, Lena caught up to me in the parking lot under the buzzing streetlight. "She's been lying to us," she said, voice low. "About everything." That was the first crack in Melissa Hart's perfect little empire. And it was also the moment I understood this wasn't going to be a one-time power trip. Because the funny thing about people who rely on intimidation is they panic the second it stops working. After that meeting, Melissa didn't slow down. She escalated. Monday morning. A county truck rolled up my driveway just after sunrise. Different inspector, different clipboard. Same uncomfortable look on his face like he'd rather be anywhere else. Someone reported unpermitted structures. He said not meeting my eyes. Every fence post, every shed, every stall. Suddenly I had to prove my grandfather's life was legal. Then came environmental. Then animal control. Then noise complaints. Nothing stuck. But the point wasn't to win a case. The point was to grind me down. And it worked. More than I want to admit. There's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from being treated like a criminal on land. You pay taxes on land your family bled for. One afternoon I found a tow truck creeping near my driveway entrance, slow like a shark. I stepped out and yelled, "You lost!" The driver held up his phone. HOA called. Said there's a violation vehicle on a community access road. I looked at him, then at my own gate, then back at him. "That's not a community road," I said. "That's my property line. Turn around." He hesitated, then did. Because even tow truck drivers can smell a setup. But Melissa didn't stop. She went public. Friday morning, a local reporter showed up near the subdivision entrance, camera on her shoulder, asking for a comment on the ranch health situation. Melissa stood in front of that lens, acting concerned, acting civic-minded, like she wasn't the one lighting the match. And the whole time I'm watching from across the fence thinking, this is insane. This is actually insane. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table with a stack of notices. A couple of legal invoices, and my grandfather's old hat hanging by the door like it was judging me. I stared at the paperwork so long the words stopped meaning anything. And for the first time since I moved back, I thought maybe I should sell. Maybe I'm the stubborn one. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe rural life really is getting squeezed out, and I'm just refusing to accept it. I hate admitting that, because part of me wanted to quit, not because she was right, but because I was tired. Tired of being on defense every single day. Then my phone buzzed. "Lena." "Can I come by?" she asked. "I found something, and it's bad." She pulled into my driveway in an old sedan that looked like it had survived 3 different school districts. She didn't waste time. She set a thick folder on my table, hand shaking just a little. "Melissa trusted me," she said. "Teachers are good with paperwork," and she thought I was harmless. What Lena showed me wasn't just ugly, it was methodical. The HOA wasn't legally incorporated. No filed articles, no recorded covenants, no enforcement authority. It existed on paper only as long as Melissa said it did. And then Lena slid over printed emails messages between Melissa and a development firm called Ironcliff Holdings. They weren't talking about community standards. They were talking about acquisition pressure, accelerated compliance tactics, and pushing the holdout. Me. There was a spreadsheet labeled incentives with dollar figures next to addresses. My address had a neat little number beside it and a note that made my stomach drop finder's fee if land changes hands. I sat back in my chair, cold all over. This wasn't a neighborhood dispute. This was a business plan. And suddenly my exhaustion turned into something sharper. Because if Melissa was doing this to me, she'd do it to anyone. I started making calls. Old colleagues, regulatory attorneys, people who knew how these things end when the evidence is real. By the weekend, Melissa snapped. Late one night, my security cameras caught movement along the fence line. Red spray paint. Big letters screaming health hazard across boards my grandfather built by hand. And the audio picked up a whisper, hers. Clear as day, she said. We need visuals for insurance for the press. I didn't call the police right away, not yet, because desperation makes people sloppy. 2 days later, a sheriff's deputy showed up with a report claiming I'd threatened Melissa over the phone. I didn't argue. I just pulled up my call logs, then pulled up the camera footage with the timestamp and watched the deputy's face change. He exhaled through his nose and said real quiet, "Keep your cameras running." That night, Lena came back with more bank transfers, HOA funds siphoned into private accounts, 6 figures over 8 months. Then she showed me the deed for Melissa's house. Melissa didn't own it. Ironcliff Holdings did. She was living in a model home playing queen of the neighborhood while selling it piece by piece. That was the moment I stopped thinking like a rancher defending land and started thinking like a regulator dismantling a criminal enterprise. Monday morning, I filed formal complaints, financial crimes, real estate fraud, impersonation, the whole stack, clean and documented. By Wednesday, the HOA started to implode. Board members resigned. Meetings were secretly recorded. Melissa sent unhinged emails about loyalty betrayal conspiracies. Not realizing every word added weight to the case building around her. And then she made her biggest mistake. She tried to impersonate the government. 2 men showed up at my door in windbreakers with fake seals holding an emergency closure order that looked impressive if you didn't know what to look for. "You have 24 hours to remove your livestock," one of them said, trying to sound official. I smiled because I couldn't help it. "Which statute gives you authority?" I asked. "Federal code, state code. Pick one." They froze. They glanced at each other like the script in their heads just ended. And that's when a real unmarked vehicle rolled up down the road, slow, deliberate. Because the truth is, the real agencies were already watching. Melissa didn't know that. She thought she was untouchable. A few nights later, there was a town hall meeting at the Red Willow Civic Center. Packed room, folding chairs, everyone murmuring like a storm about to hit. Melissa walked up to the front, like it was her victory lap, microphone in hand, smiling for cameras. "Thank you all for coming," she said, steady and practiced. "I'm proud to announce that after months of advocacy, federal authorities have finally taken decisive action to protect our community." She clicked a remote, and a photo of my ranch appeared on the screen behind her like I was the villain in her little slideshow. She talked about health risks, leadership sacrifice, and she didn't even notice Lena stand up until Lena spoke. "Melissa." Lena said, calm but loud enough to cut straight through the room. "Would you like to explain why you were arrested 3 days ago for fraud and conspiracy?" The silence hit like a brick. Melissa blinked just a half second, then tried to recover. "That was a procedural error," she said quickly. "Sometimes federal operations and the $112,000 missing from HOA funds," Lena continued, not letting her breathe, "was that also a procedural error? People